All right, welcome everybody to the PharmD Finance show with Delaney. We are going to talk about what lender you should choose when you have a business. So we'll hit that up after. Gosh, Kevin, I love you, Kevin, but man, this reel got me today. All right, Derek, minus the wheel or the reel debacle here. I'm glad we're talking about this today because I get emails constantly on lenders, and all these deals sound so good, whether it's an actual bank or whether it's like a credit card or working capital with zero APR for a year, all that stuff. And they're all tempting. They're all like, okay, we want to do this, we want to do that. So let's inject some capital so we can use that. So help me out, please.
Yeah, so I feel you there. There's no shortage of options for people to choose from when they're looking to get capital, specifically for those in the early stages of their business, where they're just trying to get some money in so they can do the thing they want to do in order to grow their business and earn a living, right? And it makes it difficult because nobody knows where to turn first, and it's usually the institutions that are best at marketing, which are the ones that end up drawing a lot of those people right away. And the question becomes, is that really the best first option for people to pursue, or are there better alternatives? And it's my opinion that there are better alternatives. And I think people, specifically business owners in the early stage of their business, should do a better job of vetting those other alternatives because they could probably be making smarter decisions.
Awesome. So do you have some other alternatives for me to start vetting?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think they need to change the question. It shouldn't be what bank should I use, or what bank should be my lender, or where should I go to get money. It should be what person should I work with at that financial institution. I think the loan officer or business lender, whatever you want to call them, is far, far more important than the actual bank you choose to do business with, because you're going to be working with that individual and trusting what they have to say far more often than any of the little things the bank in general can provide to you as a business owner. So number one is you want to find an individual that, one, you trust, has high character, and two, has high competency when it comes to lending to a business. So those two things I think are far more important than just generally picking out a bank.
I love it. Okay. And you're in this stage. What are some good questions you want to ask these lenders? Because let's say this is your first business, so you've never done this before. And now that I've had a couple of startups, it's like, okay, I know what questions and how helpful have they been in the past. But if this is your first business that you're launching and you have your, like, what do you need to ask to know if they're going to be like a right fit for you?
Yeah, so I have a couple great questions I think you should ask any lender that you sit in front of. And it's a question I would ask right away, is I would go, what kind of pull or say do you have when it comes to these lending decisions? So if you work at a huge financial institution like a Wells Fargo or US Bank or someplace like that, and you talk to a business lender, they're not going to have a seat at the table as closely as somebody who maybe works at a smaller institution who has better communication with the final decision makers when it comes to that sort of thing. So what kind of pull do you have when it comes to getting things approved from the lending side? The other area I would look at is, what is the financial health of the institution you work for? And there are a lot of different ways bankers can answer that, but one of the best ones would be capital ratios. Just learning about how well funded the financial institution is could put your mind at ease, knowing that the health of your business relies on that. And then the last thing I would ask and dig a little bit deeper into, because it directly affects your pocketbook, is what are all the other things you're going to want to know about that relationship, as far as what type of loan rate can you get? What type of fees are they going to charge? Do they have any deals where if you open up a business loan, do you get a free business checking account? Are there any compatibilities within that? And digging deeper into that type of conversation can allow you to uncover other benefits or features that may be beneficial to you and your business that you may not find just searching websites.
That's awesome. Lots of great questions there. So that's kind of like the banker side of things. What about, all these special offers I receive almost every day, whether it's email or whether it's in the like regular mail? Hey, we have the 0% APR for a year. You can get up to $100,000 of credit, all that stuff. Like, can you tell me about those, or are those kind of a trap?
I'm of the thought process that whenever you come across something like that, it's very, very important to vet it out carefully. Because with everything in life, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Nobody's out there giving away free money, creating deals that people can take advantage of that are way better than anybody else for your benefit and not theirs, right? So there's always something going on behind the scenes that could be a what if or a got you that you need to figure out before you move forward. And if you are able to properly vet and do it across multiple institutions, you can then find a lot of the comparisons and the pros and cons between each and really start to get a better idea of which one is going to serve your ulterior motive best. So when it comes to that, you're going to have to do the work of doing the research, figuring out what they're trying to hide, and are things as good as they make it seem, or is there things going on in the background that ultimately could make what sounds like a great deal not so great for you in the long run?
That makes sense. Okay, I think I have a good starting point now. Do you have anything else on this topic? That I'm kind of out of questions on this, since this is kind of like, obviously in PharmD school, we're not taught a lot about finance. You know that. So
Yep. So if you're a new business owner or you're in the beginning stages of putting together a business plan, and you go, part of this business plan is I'm going to need to raise capital. I'm going to have to walk into a bank and ask for a loan. How are they going to qualify me? How are they going to look at me? And what can I start doing personally from the financial side to make myself more appealing to a bank or loan officer? And that comes down to looking at yourself through what they call the 5 C's of lending. And that is character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. So character is your credit score. Have you borrowed in the past? Are you known to be able to repay your debts? Capacity is, what is your debt to income ratios right now? Can you afford to take on more debt while easily paying that debt off in the future? Banks are going to want to know that. Capital, what kind of money are you going to be able to put up on the front end? Just like you'd put a down payment up on a home, what kind of capital are you willing to put forward when it comes to your business? Collateral, do you have any sort of property or equipment or anything like that you're going to be able to use to essentially hold as collateral for the debt you take on? And then finally, conditions. What are the economic conditions we're in today, and how is your business going to fare if these conditions continue to roll out? And that's all part of a bank's way to monitor and establish what they believe your risk is to them. And simply enough saying, do we think they're going to be able to pay us back or not? So those are the 5 C's, and those are great ways to judge yourself before you go in and have that conversation. So you have a realistic idea of how you're going to be evaluated when you go in and sit in front of a loan officer and ask for a business loan when you're in those early stages of your business.
That makes sense. And that's also kind of scary for some as well, right? So any advice on, let's say you have a high debt, because many pharmacists have a high debt, and if they're, anything there, because it's kind of like, like I know a lot of pharmacists who have a high debt. They don't own a home. They probably lease their vehicles. So they're looking at their assets and they're like, oh man, it's not much there. So other options for those folks?
So the other options, again, most of the time, it's not as bad as you think it may seem. And there are lending programs out there that may allow you to be in a little worse financial shape, like you mentioned, and still qualify. And that's why it goes back to the original point I made at the beginning of our conversation is, I think having a relationship with a lender is the number one thing you could do, because you're going to be able to go in, have a conversation with that individual who specializes in answering those type of questions, who understands all those different loan programs out there available to you. And he or she is going to be able to better steer you in the right direction of pursuing some of those bank loans or other loans that you may have ability to get, even if your financial conditions personally aren't so great. So there are a number of different avenues you could explore. So just because you may not be graded very high personally in any one of those 5 C areas doesn't mean you're automatically disqualified from getting a loan.
That's awesome. There's hope then. is what
Oh,
you're
there's
saying.
definitely hope. I will say
Okay.
I had a very smart banker who told me this once, and I will never forget it. He said that everybody concentrates on the 5 C's, and that's how banks evaluate whether you're going to be risky or not to lend to, essentially. He goes, there's something that he calls the 5 D's that almost always will get you disqualified when it comes to lending. And the 5 D's are never talked about, but those are, and I hope I get them all right, those are divorce, dice, so people who gamble, that's a big no-no, drugs, drinking, and I think the last one was death and denial. So if you have any one of those issues in your life, that's going to severely decrease the probability of you being able to go and get financing for your small business. And the worse off you are in those areas, if you are able to secure any sort of financing for your small business, the terms are just going to be that much worse because your risk level is that much higher.
Fascinating. That was a great, that was great to end on there. So anyways, I mean, obviously someone, divorce can, I mean, that one's a touchy subject, but it's not always controlled. But the other D's, and death and denial to that one too is pretty tough. But like all the other D's in between, it's like you have 100% control over that, drugs, dice, drinking, right?
Yep.
So interesting.
You're exactly right. And again, if you have some of that stuff going on, it doesn't mean you're automatically disqualified from getting financing. I still think it's worth your time to call up a financial institution or find somebody that you like and trust who works in that field, because they are the expert. They're going to know more than I know about any of this stuff, or a lot of other people you may have the ability to talk to. Talk to that expert, explain your situation, and they're going to give you honest feedback on if you have an opportunity to actually secure any sort of long-term financing or not. And if not, they're probably going to have better alternatives for you to pursue than all the emails or junk mail you get every single day as well. So first step should always be find somebody you like, somebody who's competent in that area, and somebody you trust, and have that first conversation and take their feedback very, very heavily when it comes to making future decisions after that discussion.
Love it, Derek. Love it. Amazing. Anything else before we close?
No, that does it for me today.
All right. Always appreciate your time. We'll see you here next week.